I'm legally insane. And right here are the top 10 NES games that I grew up playing in the 80s and early 90s. This is not the top 10 best games. This is the top 10 most played games. And generally, the most played games were whatever games you had the most access to. And for each and every one of us that grew up during that era, your list, the games that you played the most, the games that you sunk the most hours into, it's going to be different for everyone. And some people, hell, maybe there's at least one kid out there that sunk all of his time into Sesame Street because that's all he had. His mother was into edutainment. She was drinking the Kool-Aid on, let's use this as an educational tool. And this poor kid, that's all he had. Probably turned into a friggin' rocket scientist on top of that. The guy's a friggin' brain surgeon right now. He was learning his alphabet at age 3. This kid was counting all the way to 10 before he even hit kindergarten. I remember coming home from kindergarten one day. I vividly remember. And I was all excited that I just learned how to count to 10. And I showed my mother. I counted all the way from 1 to 10, expecting a gold frickin' medal. I never got one. I thought I was Einstein. And yet some other kid out there who grew up on Sesame Street, he's already counting to 10. He doesn't even know what numbers are. He's just playing this video game and they're forcing him to count to 10. Now these games are in no particular order with the exception of number 1. Right here, boys. Super Contra. They called it Super C for some reason, but since day one I've always called it Super Contra. I've never in my life called it Super C. This right here is a Konami published game from 1988. Can you imagine that a game this great came out that early? You'd think that this was a late release title, but no. This bad boy 1988, because Konami was in their prime during the NES era. This is a run and gun action game and the best run and gun action game ever made to this very day. And I'll argue till the cows come home that this is the best Contra game ever made. I will argue that it is better than the Sega Genesis Contra. I will make that argument, including this, and better than the Super Nintendo one too. And you know what? Back then, I didn't use the Konami code either. Now, admittedly, I never beat it without using a Game Genie on top of that. And even with the Game Genie, 30 lives is how many lives the Game Genie would give you. And even with those 30 lives, it could be a real tough game. Great game. I played it on 2-player all the time and single player. I mean, the great thing about Super Contra is you can play single player or multiplayer and you're going to have a blast. Number 2, we got Blades of Steel. Many will argue that this is the best hockey game to this very day. I kid you not. You can make that argument because it's simple pickup and play controls. Your mother could come over. I could bring your mother and your sister over here. And hell, bring your grandma over here too. We'll do a 4-player tournament. It's pick up and play. Pass, shoot, steal. Simple. Anybody can play and anybody can have a chance to actually win. And guess what, guys? If you didn't notice, this is a Konami game. I told you, Konami was in their prime. They were making sports games. They were making running guns. They were making platformers. They made all the best games from the 80s and early 90s. Another thing that made Blades of Steel special was the fighting mechanic. If you bumped into another player 3 times in a row without being interrupted, you would break out into a fight. And the fights were so fun and the fighting mechanics were so amazing. Even the graphics were very impressive for NES standards. But you would constantly make deals with your friend. They say, hey, you want to get in a fight? Like mid-game. You just like, hey, let's get into a fight. Let's duke it out. And the other beauty of it was the winner wasn't penalized. So it was serious freaking business getting into a fight. Because if you lost the fight, you might just dang well lose the game. Oh yeah, it's serious business because if you lose, you're going to the penalty box and your friend ain't getting no penalty. Now it's 5-on-4, bitch. How do you like that? You want to get in another fight? We'll make it a 5-on-3, bitch. Let's do it again. Serious business. Hell, it might even end up in real life fist fight as well. That can happen. I'm sure it happened more than once. Oh yeah, I'm sure it happened a lot. And lastly, what made Blades of Steel one of the best hockey games ever made was the shootouts at the end. If you ended in a tie, it would end up going to a shootout, and you had to control your own goalie during the shootout. And the shootouts were fun as hell. And again, if one player was winning by just one goal, you might make an agreement to say, "Hey, how about we tie it up, go to a shootout." Number 3 is Double Dragon 3. I played the hell out of this because guess what? I owned this game. I don't know how I got it. I really don't. I wish I could remember how I ended up owning it, if I got it for Christmas or birthday. I figure I probably bought it used from Roger's Video. So this game came out in 1990. Published by Acclaim. 1990. And this game is famous for being hard as hell. It is nothing like Double Dragon 1 or 2. Very different. And guess what? You get one life. One life, you lose that life, you're done. A lot of people didn't even make it out of the first room, which is a dojo. I kid you not, a lot of players never made it out of the dojo. Probably your average player, to be quite honest with you. I don't know how I was so good at the game. I never thought it was all that difficult that I can remember. It wasn't until I played it many years later when I was already a fully grown adult. Probably after watching the Angry Video Game Nerd complain about how difficult it was, I went back and I played it and I said, "Holy hell, this game's hard as hell." I couldn't even beat the first level. I kept playing, eventually I beat the first level and you start learning the tricks again. But one of the things that you have to do is you're going to be spamming that spinning jump kick all day. But what made the game so unique and so good was that when you beat a boss, you would get that boss on your team and you could be that character. That had never been done before, and those characters acted as your extra lives. So every character that you get, you only get one life. Number 4, we got Star Tropics. This is an action-adventure game similar to Zelda for the Super Nintendo. Really, that top-down view, same fighting mechanics, same style of gameplay, same style of dungeons, very similar. And believe it or not, this was published and developed in-house by Nintendo. And oddly enough, how I got this game was asking for it for either Christmas or my birthday, or just begging for another game. but I remember seeing the commercials. The commercials is what got me. Commercials can be very effective. And here's the thing about the commercial. I also vividly remember not knowing what the hell the game was. I was just so mesmerized by that commercial. And I went and rewatched the commercial too, and they really barely show you any gameplay. You barely understand what it was. I think I was just so mesmerized by that logo. And they showed the logo at the end of the commercial, and those trees moving, and I don't know what the hell's going on, but it looks like some sort of tropical island. I was mesmerized. I didn't know it was going to become a legendary game, one of the best NES games ever made. I had no idea. But I did get it, and I was shocked by the gameplay, and I was very happy that I did get it. Number 5, RC Pro AM, one of the best racing games ever made. There is a number 2. A sequel was made that is significantly better, because this game had one flaw and one flaw only, in that it was not multiplayer. I know. I don't understand, because guess what? I know that they were capable of making it multiplayer, because the sequel is not only 2-player, but it's 4-player. You can get the 4-player satellite adapter, 4-player 4-square adapter, and you can play 4-player. But for whatever reason, they cheaped out and they went single-player. So this was a pick up the controller, pass and play game. So we would take turns. And I didn't own this game, but I had a friend down the street. He had it. Anytime I was over at his house, this was the go-to game. You had to play it. He owned it, and I spent many countless hours over at my buddy's house playing this game. Countless hours. It never got old. It was basically Mario Kart before Mario Kart existed. You're racing RC cars, and you're getting weapons, missiles to shoot at enemies. You're getting bombs to drop behind you. I think you might even be able to drop some oil slicks. You're getting star power-ups like in Mario Brothers. And you're collecting power-ups to permanently upgrade your car around each and every one of the tracks. There's track hazards. I'm telling you, this is probably where Nintendo got the idea to make Mario Kart in the first place. And on top of that, it was developed by Rare. Rare made this game. Published by Nintendo, but Rare developed the game. This bad boy came out in 1988. Can you imagine how many great games came out in the late 80s? 1987 to basically 1989, a lot of heavy hitters came out. Number 6 is Skate or Die, another Konami game under their fake second brand, Ultra, which they used to get around Nintendo's rules. They secretly used to get around the the rules that Nintendo put in place that said you could only publish 5 games per year. Well, Konami said, screw you, we're just going to make a second game company that's actually secretly still us. And we're going to produce more than 5 games per year. Because we are Konami, and we do what the hell we want because we make the best games in the world. Skate or Die came out in 1987. How I found this game back in the day, there was no internet. You got to remember, no internet. I didn't have no freaking Nintendo Power magazines in 1987. I saw an advertisement, a poster in Kmart. The posters in Kmart worked. In-store advertising was obviously effective because I went to Kmart, I saw the poster, it said Skate or Die, and I just about blew my balls off. In fact, I think that was the very first time that I had a strong urge to pick up a gun as a, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, who knows how old I was, but I wanted to pick up a gun and blow my balls off right there because it just looked awesome. And look at that title, Skate or Die. Who came up with that? And we used to play this on 2-player a lot. There's 5 different events that you can do. There's 2 events where you're racing downhill and you could punch each other while you're racing. Like, it's some serious freaking business. There's a jousting level. You are jousting on a half pipe type of thing, and you're trying to knock your opponent off. Like, you're actually jousting. It's like friggin' medieval times, but you're on skateboards. Very, very fun game for its time. Number 7, we got Little Nemo's Dream Master, Capcom produced 1990 platformer. Capcom was the main competitor to Konami back then, and they were hitting out bangers all day. Little Nemo is a very underrated game. It's not talked about enough. A lot of people, they know it exists and they kind of know it's a good game, but nobody talks about it. And they forget that Capcom made the game. And it might be, I think I know why. I think it's because the game is difficult. And that was its biggest flaw. It was a little bit too difficult. They just had to lower the difficulty a little bit. So basically, the main mechanic in this game is that you can find these different animals throughout all the stages. And if you feed them candy, you can ride them and use their special abilities. And there's going to be certain animals that you want to use for certain parts of the game. And they're just fun as hell to use on top of that, to use the different abilities and just explore the stages. A lot of exploration going on. They did a great job with level design. Now, I will admit, because the game was so difficult, I wasn't able to get very far, so I did use a Game Genie. So maybe that's why I had a better time with it than your average person. Maybe your average person would give up after they reach level 2 or level 3. But I do remember I beat the game. I used a Game Genie, and I had a great time with it, and I highly recommend it. Number 8, you already know. This had to be on the list somewhere. Who didn't have this in their top 10 most played games? Name one kid that didn't have this. because everybody and their mother had this. This was the first Ninja Turtles game to come out on the entire console. Hell, it might have been the first Ninja Turtles game ever made. I'm pretty sure it was. And guess who made it? Another secretly Konami game under the Ultra brand. Now, it was hard as hell. Everybody knows it's not not an easy game. Some people actually beat it. I know a guy that beat this game. He actually beat this game as a kid. No strategy guide, no Nintendo Power, no internet, no Game Genie. He beat the game. And I know other people that almost beat the game back then. They almost beat it. Well, me, I'll be honest with you, I never got past the swimming stage. A very, very difficult stage. I had to have friends beat that stage for me. I don't know why I couldn't beat it. I just couldn't do it, okay? I never beat it. I remember watching kids beat it, and I remember them getting the Ninja Turtles van, and all I wanted to do was get the van and drive around in the Turtles van. That's all I wanted to do, and I never got to do it. Everybody knows this game, but it is a side-scrolling action game. A little bit of platforming involved. And everybody knows Donatello is the best turtle. Some people like Leonardo. He's not bad. He's the second place turtle. But Donatello is the best because he has the longest range. For number 9, we got good old Konami back again. Heavy freaking hitter, Tiny Toons. Tiny Toon Adventures. This game came out in 1991. Can you believe that? 1991. And guess how I got this game? Once again, I was browsing a store because that's how you found new games back then. You either saw a commercial or you went to the store, and that's how you found out about new releases. You just go to the store. And I went to Toys R Us. I think my dad probably brought me there for my birthday and said you can pick out one item in the store that you want for your birthday. Of course, I went straight to the video games, and I just about blew my balls off yet again because I love Tiny Toons, and I saw that they had a Tiny Toons video game. And of course, I picked it up right away. There was no question. I didn't even have to browse any other game. It was hands down Tiny Toons, and it did not disappoint. Played the hell out of it. I had friends coming over to play it. You get 4 different Tiny Toons. You got Buster, you got Plucky Duck, Dizzy Devil, and who's that cat guy? What's his name? Furball. Yeah, Dizzy Devil and Furball, and they all have unique powers. They're all different. Buster jumps high, Dizzy spins, and he can kill enemies and smash through walls. The cat can climb things, which wasn't very useful. The cat kind of sucked, but but who cares? It was still fun to climb things. And then, who was it? Plucky Duck can fly. You can fly through basically the entire first level. It's an action platformer game. Great game. I have it on my bucket list to beat it one day, because I know it's not the hardest game in the world, but it's still hard enough that I never beat it. So it's not super easy. It's not as easy as it sounds. And I'm not the greatest gamer out there. I'll give you that. I'm sure some of you beat it, but hey, I never beat it. And I'm not talking about using a Game Genie here. Last game on the list, we got Double Dribble. Came out in 1987. This is the very first good basketball game ever made for any console. And that's why this is such a legendary game that a lot of people are going to be familiar with this. Just like Blades of Steel. But in this case, it was actually 110% the first great basketball game. Very simplistic. Pass, shoot, steal, 5-on-5 basketball. But it had an awesome halftime show. And sometimes you would get these cinematic cutscenes, essentially, of you getting a slam dunk. It was really, really advanced stuff. Considering, guys, did you not hear what I said? 1987. And they were trying to simulate these close-up cutscenes back then. That's incredible. That's Konami putting effort in. This wasn't some garbage Atari sports game. Sports games weren't all that great on the Atari. You might have thought they were good because that's all you had. But when the NES came, the NES marked an era of the first really, really good video games being made. That's when we really realized what video games are capable of. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm trying to get to over 9,000 subscribers, on my way to collecting over 9,000 retro video games. And I'm going to have to count these one of these days. I know I'm probably close. I mean, I gotta be. I got thousands of games. I've never counted them yet.